navigating compliance, talent needs, and strategic planning. My name is Paula, and I work as a user researcher at Localize, and I will be your host for today. We've also got Tash, who is in the background, as I just said. And over the next 60 minutes, we're going to be talking with our expert panel. So that's Lori and Petya, who will introduce themselves in a second, about the evolving landscape of global mobility and what it looks like moving towards 2025. We're going to explore how trends in compliance, digital innovation, and talent expectations are shaping the future. And we'll also look at strategies to help your organization stay agile and competitive when it comes to global mobility. And at the end of the call, we'll wrap up with a 10-minute Q&A. So you can leave any questions that you have throughout the call on the Q&A section here on Zoom. It should be at the bottom of your screen. So let's just now welcome our panelists. So I'm going to hand it over to them to introduce themselves. And you can share a little bit about your current roles. Tell us a bit about your backgrounds in global mobility. So maybe we can start with Petya.
Thank you, Paula. So my name is Petya Pavlova. I'm a global mobility manager at ERM. That stands for Environmental Resources Management. We are a sustainability company, and sustainability is our business. I have been in the global mobility role, in this role with ERM for 3 years now. My background is mainly in immigration. So over to you, Lori.
Thank you, Petya. Thank you very much, Paula, for the invitation. Hello, everyone. My name is Lori, and I work as a talent mobility manager at Proces in Amsterdam. Proces is a technology investment holding company that operates and invests in classifieds, payments, education technology, and food delivery businesses in over 100 markets, including Europe, India, and Brazil. And just to give you a little bit of background about our team, we are a team of 2 people, and we support our corporate office. But in addition to this, we also provide talent mobility advisory and solutions for all the companies within our group. On a yearly basis, we manage around 100 to 200 mobility cases, ranging from cross-border commuters, short-term assignments, and permanent relocations. I very much look forward to the conversation today.
Awesome.
Maybe I should have said a bit more about our program. And I think I forgot that in my introduction.
You want to go ahead now?
Well, yeah, so we spread over like about 40 countries, and we have similarly about like 100 moves a year, and they're primarily permanent transfers, and we have a lot of employee-led transfers, and we operate on a host-based approach only, which is something I feel that a lot of companies are now trying to move towards, but we've been there for quite some time, and we can discuss that later.
Fantastic. Thank you both for your intros. That will give all of the attendees a really good idea of who you are and where you come from and what kinds of things you do at your current companies. So now, before we actually start with the questions, we want to do a little poll. So we'll be launching a quick poll through Zoom. So if something pops up that is a poll, don't be afraid that anything is going wrong. Just choose an answer. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. I'm going to just stop talking so you can think about it, and then we'll pause the results. Awesome. Just 1 more minute so you can think about it. No pressure. Perfect. Thank you, Tash. So you can see the results here. So the most important priority when it comes to global mobility appears to be aligning mobility strategies with business goals, as well as enhancing employee experience and relocations and immigrations. But quite similar for all the responses. So that's an interesting thing, because it means that there's quite a variety of priorities across all of the participants to these webinars. So that's really nice and interesting. So we're going to be moving on now to our opening question. So that means that will be the first question that our panelists will start to answer. So let's do that. So our opening question today is, global mobility encompasses so many different areas, from compliance to employee experience. So from your point of view, what aspects do you think will become even more essential in the coming year? Petia, Lori, whoever wants to start, just feel free to jump in.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, it's been, as everyone knows, from immigration perspective, the election year, and it's not immigration, but tax as well. So I feel that next year, probably it will be settling into the new regulations and new laws and the new ways that governments operate. But at the same time, you need to continue business as usual and also meet the business needs. So the main thing for me is that word flexibility that goes around in the industry quite a bit. So how can we ensure that we maintain that flexibility with the ever-changing world, not only politically, geopolitically as well. There are a lot of things happening in the world, changes. So keeping up on top of things, keeping up on top of news, keeping up on top of updates, and making sure that we are always aligned with what is happening in our organization. But at the same time, and it appeared as one of the top things in the poll, always ensuring that we listen to the employees as well. And so it is a balancing act. And I think that this will continue being the focus in 2025, but even more so because of the increasing need for flexibility.
I absolutely echo what Petia said. I think as global mobility professionals, we will be facing some challenges in staying updated and ensuring local, regional, and compliance with local, regional, and international laws. More so since we see a lot more the regulations becoming stricter, a lot more control from authorities, much higher fines. So definitely a point of interest in the coming year. What I would also like to add is having talent mobility programs in place that enable retention and development. I think what we see is that businesses today face a lot of uncertainty. There's downsizing, there's cost cutting, and having the ability to retain and develop your talent will allow your business to be better positioned, survive and thrive through times of disruption. Another point that I see essential is connected to the well-being of our mobile workforce, both physically and mentally, and also to connect to what Petia mentioned, focusing on personalized mobility packages, providing access to mental health resources, family assistance programs, cultural coaching will ensure both resilience and a smooth transition to their new destination. In addition to that, I think we're navigating times of heightened global health and safety risks, and I think offering comprehensive health and safety resources will become key in the coming period.
Thank you both. Great answers. So that was our opening question, but now we can move on to the topics that we actually voted on the poll. So one of the main topics was about aligning mobility with business goals. So maybe we can have our next question be around that. So in your experience, Petia and Laurie, what role does a well-structured mobility program play in supporting organizational resilience and growth?
Well, the short answer is big. It's a big role, but obviously the most important thing is every organization is different. And it's not only dependent on the industry, like the sector that they're operating in, it's cultural, it has like the way that it operates, the way it's structured. So the first thing that every global mobility person or team needs to do is to make sure that we really understand how the organization operates and what are the priorities, where we can find out flexibility, structure, how we can position ourselves to be enabler to the company rather than just building policies. So the first thing is really to understand the business, and once you understand the business, then it's a lot more it's a lot easier to actually structure something that will serve the needs of the company. But once you do that, an organization is a living organism. It does change. It does change internally. Every company ultimately wants to grow. And if you achieve that, obviously, your landscape will change. But at the same time, what we discussed earlier of all the external factors as global events, political, geopolitical, natural disasters, changes in regulation, and all that is ever moving and changing. So we need to make sure that whatever policies we build, they can be easily amended, so they can be updated and be in line with the changes that are happening. They should be always reviewed and always kind of considered. How you process exceptions, how you can actually plug in flexibility without needing to go through a vigorous exception process, and really review it on a regular basis, but set a time to do like an overall review and again, check up with your business.
What I would add on top of what Petia mentioned, and I fully agree with what she said, is that the talent that we look at today is a global nomad talent, and while looking at our business priorities, we also need to consider how do we balance these programs with the needs of the employees that we either want to with the talent that we either want to hire or with our internal talent, to make sure that we retain them, we develop them, and the company stays also competitive overall. So, as Petia mentioned, it's really a fine balancing act between building these policies in such a way that it makes sense for both the business and the employees.
Perfect. And that moves us nicely onto my next topic. That was also one of the top ones on the poll, which was about talents and their preferences and what they expect. So based on your interactions and your roles, what do employees prioritize most in relocation and immigration support? So I think ties quite nicely with what you were just saying, Laurie.
Yeah, I feel that, and I apologize, maybe not in advance because I already did it, but I'll keep repeating that word flexibility because it's really important, and I feel that some organizations may not have the freedom to do that flexibility, but it will happen that more and more you need to be more flexible because the times are changing there. And on the question what people kind of want, sometimes like they know what they want, especially if they're seasoned relocators, but if they're not, that there's the point where they just don't know what they don't know, or they don't know what they want because they haven't been through that process. And that's where we step in to guide them, like what is best for them, to tell them like what is available, what they should expect, and then see what really works for them. And again, that ties in to having that flexibility in the policy, because you don't want to provide something to a person when they don't actually need it. We had like a case recently where we we provided a benefit, a very expensive benefit to somebody, but we didn't really understand what their needs are. And when we actually spoke with him and saw what his needs are, it appeared that we can provide 4 different services for a lower price, and bring a lot more value to the person than when the one benefit that we were planning to provide, just because we thought that, like, okay, we want this person, we'll get them like the most expensive thing, but the most expensive thing is something that this person didn't need at all. So it's really important to listen to the people and set their expectations. The process is difficult. There are a lot of moving parts, and it's a really stressful time for a person, especially if they have a family and children, even pets. There's so many things that you need to think about when you're living one country, to sort out your life that you've been living there for a number of years, if not your whole life, and then setting in a new country where you not necessarily, sometimes you may know it, but not necessarily know it. You don't know, like, what's the culture, you don't know what are the requirements. So it's really important to be able to set out those expectations, and of course have the right partners who will be able to assist you and have that knowledge, local knowledge, because as much as we try to know everything, it's not humanly possible to know everything about every country in the world, and that's why we have our partners, there comes the relationship building with our partners, our vendors. We need to make sure that they're the right ones to match our culture as an organization, the way we are working, and they really know what we're expecting for them to deliver to our employees.
On my side, I think the answer is pretty much along the same lines. I think personalization and flexibility and mobility packages these are the 2 keywords here. These are the things that matter most for our employees. Being able to tailor your relocation support based on your personal needs, your personal circumstances, can really, help enhance the overall experience that you as an employee have. And I would also add the support that you receive from either, we also work with a relocation management company, right? So that support that our employees receive from the relocation specialist is so critical. It's so important to feel that you have someone you can count on whenever a stressful situation appears. So this is definitely an important thing. I would also mention here immigration, actually, providing immigration support for the entire family. One thing that we have been confronted with lately has been relocating families that are let's say they have partners that live in other countries. They have partners that have completely different nationality than the employee relocating. They have children who are being born in another country. And this is a result of, the global workforce that we work with, and in general, people becoming real nomads, traveling from one place to another. So then the complexities around solving these immigration issues is becoming higher. And if as a company you can provide that support and you can facilitate the entire process, it will certainly be a plus to the overall employee experience. And one other thing that I would like to add here, because this is also connected to hiring a diverse workforce. I think we're not yet at a stage where all countries, for instance, accept same-sex marriages, right? So finding solutions together with your employees and helping them bringing their partners to another country is also something that becomes of importance.
Yeah, and it's also like having those conversations, because in your example, sometimes that move might not be the best think personally for that person. Like in same-sex couples, obviously in some countries, unfortunately, it's still not acceptable and they might struggle. So just really having the open conversations with people and setting expectations is crucial.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing that. The next question is about, from your perspective, how do you design mobility benefits while also trying to keep both costs low or reasonable, but also not take on too much compliance risk because of everything that you mentioned around personalization? How does that work?
It is tricky. It is tricky, but like again, I'll repeat myself. But like you need to listen to the business and see what is needed. And as much as we want to provide everything to the employees, it's not necessarily that some things they need them, and sometimes like you can provide things on a lower cost that bring better value to the employee. So that's why it's the key to have that flexibility in the policies. But at the same time, I do keep saying flexibility in the policies, but that doesn't mean that like you should have free for all. There need to be structure. There need to be like clear criteria on how that flexibility is being managed. You need to really partner with your relocation company or like your immigration partner and so on to make sure that they're applying it in the way that you want it within the budget that you have set. But that's I think that's the main crucial role that global mobility people have, is just to listen to the business, listen to the employee, and make sure that we can tailor something for that meets both needs. And it is increasing. There are increasing cost pressures globally. We see like big companies are taking like some cost reductions, and we see a lot of companies moving to host-based approaches to minimize the assignment costs. So it is a trend, and I think it is also triggered by the war of talent, and that more and more it is more and more difficult to find talent. So you need to get more and more people from other countries, which might increase your moving population, which will increase your costs. So how do you keep sort of the same level of talent, but don't increase your costs so it doesn't affect the bottom line? And that's like the balance that you need to find in the policies. And really the language in your policies should not be open to interpretation. It needs to be flexible, but not open to interpretation. So you need to have really clear criteria, really clear guidance. If you need to build additional resources just to clarify things in certain scenarios, and if you need to do any exceptions that are totally out of the policy, then really you need to document that and make sure that it doesn't create unfair treatment because you provided something more to somebody and you are not willing to provide it to another person, or create a culture where you just need to throw money at everyone just because you did it for one person. But just keeping on top of everything is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points, Petya. And I think the point you brought around fairness is an important one. We think maintaining also transparency around our policies, right, is important, especially when you don't have a standard approach. And one example that comes into my mind when thinking about how do you design a policy that like designing mobility benefits while also trying to keep the costs low. We work together with one of the companies in our group to provide them with advisory and help them design a policy. The challenge that they were facing was connected to budget, right? So they wanted to still provide some support. So providing no support was out of the table. Regardless of the seniority, but they had really constraints when it came to how much money they would be able to spend. The company was a company hiring mostly engineers, but from time to time, they would also want to be able to attract seasoned leaders. So, you have these two target audiences with essentially different needs and also different lifestyles, maybe, because one population was a little bit younger than the other one. And the solution we came up with was to design a tiered approach that would focus on a package for juniors, for mid-level, and for seniors. And a common element across these three tiers was maintaining the compliance elements. So all of those benefits that help keep compliance in check. And then, depending on seniority, you would offer more benefits as the tier would go up. So yeah, I think this would be a good example of how you can balance your budget while still staying competitive and managing to attract talent. We did make it public, right? So in terms of transparency, we did say that, okay, this is our policy, and the thinking around it is based on budgets, right? So we still want to offer support, but then we would design it in this way.
Nice, thank you both. So there was also the topic of compliance and navigating these compliance needs. So maybe we can move on to the following section, which is around this. So my first question is, how are you seeing regulatory changes impact global mobility today? And how can companies stay ahead of these changes in 2025?
Yeah, so when we were preparing for this webinar with Laurie, it appeared we are quite aligned as much as we have different challenges within our organizations, but it seemed that like this particular question, we kind of had a different, we're thinking about different sort of compliance challenges. For me, like the first thing that came to mind, and again, maybe because I'm thinking about flexibility so much in my day, I was thinking about the short-term cross-border movement. Everyone knows that since the pandemic, it was obvious that people ended up all over the world. It was obvious that a lot of companies, if not majority, didn't exactly know where their employees are, and it became a focus. It's now 4 years later, so I think that a lot of organizations, or most organizations, are in a better place with their tracking of their people, and whether they have a policy in place or just took some sort of a approach of how to deal with that. However, as much as organizations, private companies jumped on that as a challenge and did something about it, or at least have some sort of a strategy in that sense, I think that the governments saw that it was there, because there were a lot of concessions during the pandemic for social security, for tax, for immigration, because people were just stranded somewhere. So they put those concessions in place, but once they lifted them, not many governments around the world did anything to actually regularize that short-term movement. We've seen from immigration perspective a lot of digital nomads, which are not exactly the answer to the moving population. In my personal opinion, it works best for freelancers, not as much for person who is employed. But obviously that's a complex topic, and it's not our subject today. But again, it's not for the short term. And people wanna travel, people wanna stay with family for longer, people wanna spend like quality time abroad, but being able not to waste their annual leave or just like have that quality time. And it is apparent that talent needs that. And again, with a war of talent, if people demand that, like if you don't provide it, you may lose your competitiveness. The struggle here is that the governments haven't really put anything in their legislation, especially from tax perspective or social security perspective, to actually say, okay, if you are for, in our country for up to 30 days or even like 2 weeks or whatever they want to put, it's okay. Just, it doesn't matter. There's so much gray area, and then it will come to the company's risk appetite, whether they will be like want to be 100% fully compliant on the safe side, or they want to interpret it in a way that there is a flexibility. So I feel that there might be like changes happening, maybe not necessarily in 2025, but in terms of this short-term movement be a bit more regulated. I feel that tax probably will come much later. Tax as usual is moving much slower than anything else. But I'm just like curious to see whether that will come to an agenda, even though with all the political changes this year, probably it won't be a focus next year, but I feel that it will be coming more and more on the forefront. And up to you, Laurie, for your take on that question.
Yes, I see actually the biggest impact coming from changes in immigration legislation. Well, actually both immigration and tax. On the immigration side, I think we see due to the shifts in geopolitical climates, we see more stricter immigration laws. An example that comes into mind here is the UK, for instance. They've increased their salary thresholds, for example. Also, we have countries that are not necessarily their laws are not necessarily affected by changes, but they are affected by government chaos. I have an example here. Portugal is such an example, or by war. Poland is right now suffering from this perspective. We have actually a big operation in Poland, and at the moment, waiting times for obtaining your residence permit can go up to a year and over, and this has a big impact on the well-being of our employees, but also on our day-to-day business, as we have a lot of business travel and these employees cannot travel. Same for Portugal, very long waiting times. We also see some in the Netherlands, for instance, we've seen more scrutiny around certain immigration cases and more rejections coming from the authorities, which was not so common before. So I think in general, it is a little bit more difficult to navigate what is going on at the moment. And I would also say that the future digital plans for the EU entry-exit system coming in Europe, although I think it's probably a good thing, but it also means a lot more control, and it also means that we as companies, we need to be way more careful with compliance. We also see some positive changes, and I'm thinking here of the Blue Card, European Blue Card Directive, and the fact that most European countries have to implement it. What I am personally missing here, and I will only refer to the Netherlands because I'm more, I'm dealing more with cases here, is that it's great that it became an option, but when you think about the actual implementation, it still takes a long time to obtain a blue card versus the current type of permit that is available in the Netherlands. Although it's on the long term, it's more beneficial for the employee to apply for a blue card. So we still find ourselves as a business, thinking what's best to do, because we need to have these people on board as soon as possible. And we also want to do the best for them in terms of the type of permit that we apply for them that would allow them for more rights within the European Union. But we're kind of constrained in doing so still. So I'm also curious to see how this will evolve. On the tax side, what has been very interesting was the decision of certain governments either to withdraw or to reduce their special tax regime programs. And we've seen this with Portugal and the Netherlands. And that had an impact on our ability to attract talent in these locations. That would be my take.
I totally agree with you as well, like on everything there, and I feel the pain in Portugal and Poland as well. And everywhere else. But I guess like it's that balancing act that we've been talking about, that we need to make sure that we keep on top of changes and just be agile, I guess.
Thank you both, Petya and Lori. Just going from this question to the next one, which is also really connected. What are the key compliance areas or metrics that do you focus on to ensure smooth cross-border operations, and how do you maintain oversight of these different areas?
Yeah, so I say that I think that it's in our job description as a global mobility professional, at least I think it should be, that you need to be curious, because if you're not curious and you are not on top of the news, you are not asking your partners for updates, you are not checking like what's happening around the world, it will be very difficult to effectively do your job. So it's really make sure that you always like educate yourself and keep your knowledge on top, whether it's attending events in person, online like this one we have here. Really work with your partners and vendors to make sure and trust them that they will update you with any changes in the world. And so you can communicate that to the business, and always keep an open communication line with the business as well, and make sure that you can let them know in case like any changes are affecting our population, are affecting our ability to attract or retain talent, and just be always kind of agile. And I think that's kind of it. We need to be on top of it.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Absolutely, Petya. Our key focus areas are no different than any other company. We look after immigration, making sure that our employees have the right to work in place and that their permits are being renewed on time. We look at tax, and we make sure that we comply with tax obligations. We ensure that our employees fulfill their cross-border tax obligations. We look at Social Security, at Postal Worker Directive, duty of care, permanent establishment. So everything that you would typically look at when dealing with cross-border employment. I think also to maintain oversight of this, we work closely with our partners, and they help us with staying updated with the latest news, but also provide us with advisory whenever we have a new case to work on. And at the same time, I would say that it is really actually having these partners is really key in making sure that you stay compliant at all times. I do not see a world where we would not have them.
Thank you a lot. And finally, just to wrap up this topic, can you share any best practices or technologies that your organizations use to manage compliance efficiently, especially across borders? Because as you said, you work with different countries.
So there's like a lot of good technology, and obviously technology is coming, and we need to embrace it. And there are a lot of providers out there who provide excellent global mobility tracking tools. However, depending on organization, and our organization is not there yet to invest in any tools. So what I try to do at ERM is utilize what we currently have to the best of our abilities, until we mature enough to maybe have some external help, or we just build something from what we have. So what we do, we use our timesheets to kind of monitor location when people are working away from their employment location. We have our cross-border remote working policy, the by workation one, depending how people are saying it, on Workday. So I try to kind of utilize Workday as much as possible. And we're in the process of building a process that we will eventually put hopefully on Workday, where it will have all the steps of the global mobility process, and it will connect myself with the HR, talent acquisitions teams, and everyone who needs to be involved in a move. We also pull regular reports from our travel provider and ISOS just to make sure that as much as the business travel is not within my remit, we are closely connected, and just make sure that people, if somebody stays longer, there are compliance elements to that. So we need to step in and really working together with different departments within the company. It's tax, legal, travel, procurement, HR obviously is a big one, talent acquisition, everyone. You just need to make sure that we work together, and when there are gaps in the process, we kind of identify them and see what's the best way to do it. And it can be done. Sometimes it might, depending on the volume, it can be done only with internal resources. So if you don't have the budget to buy fancy third-party technology, and I've seen a really good solutions out there, but as I said, like at this time our organization is not ready to invest in something like that. But then just look internally and see what you have. Every company has some sort of technology, and see how you can utilize that to help you and your population, and to fill in those gaps between any processes with other departments.
I think from that perspective, we are in a rather lucky position, because we rely on our partners to track and monitor our compliance when it comes to, so our relocation partners, our immigration and tax partners. They typically are the ones who inform us on expiration of permits, expiration of social security certificates, whether we need to do a posted worker notification or a short-term business travel for the UK. So we heavily rely on them, on their technology for tracking these. In terms of internal best practices, I would say that we work very closely with our talent acquisition team, our HR business partners, our payroll teams, HR operations globally, and we try to align with them. We try to provide continuous training as well, just to make sure that they are up to date with the latest developments from a compliance perspective, and then continuously adapt and align on the processes to follow whenever a cross-border situation comes up.
Thank you so much, Katia and Lori. I think we're getting close to the end of the session, so I would like us to move to our final question, and then we'll have the Q&A from the public. So my final question is, looking to the future, what emerging trends or shifts do you believe will shape global mobility beyond 2025, and how should organizations prepare to stay agile and resilient in these scenarios?
Well, I think I said it like about 10 times at least. Flexibility. I think that that's it. Like we need to change our mindset and like see how we can be a bit more, well, we need to be like more agile, and it's important to work with our partners. It's important to keep on top of news, and don't be scared to make changes to policies, or kind of just making changes altogether. Changes sometimes can be a scary thing, but if you don't do it, you may miss out. And as the times are moving fast, you might just stay behind. So that's kind of my thing. Just be agile, flexible, and open-minded.
Yeah, from my perspective, staying a bit ahead of remote and flexible work arrangements. I think this is going to become key in the future as remote work becomes more and more prevalent. Having policies and infrastructures to support flexible work arrangements, I think it will be crucial in the future. And I think the challenges there will be also, connecting to what Petya said, managing cross-border work compliance and data protection as well. And another thing would be prepare ourselves for AI. for a technology era that slowly will start to be integrated into our work.
Embrace it.
Embrace it, yes.
Yeah.
Embrace it.
Thank you. We're running out of time, which is I can't follow up, but I wish I could ask you more about that question around AI and how you're thinking about it. But we do have some questions from the attendees that I would like us to at least try to get through some of them. So the first one is, this one was directed to Petia in particular. They asked when we were talking about, I think it was talent needs, or talent experience, they ask, what role does your relocation provider play in this flexibility, Petia, when you were describing?
Yeah, it is important because you can all, again, if you don't work with other people and you just design something and draft something, it might be the most beautiful policy. It might seem that it meets all your needs and on the business needs. But then at the end of the day, when it comes to execution, if it's not possible to execute it in that way, if it's not possible to provide that, it's just a piece of paper. So when designing the policies, you also need to really communicate with partners and the relocation partner, and they can tell you sometimes if that's something that is not possible. To be honest, in my experience with relocation partners, they're quite flexible, which I'm very grateful for. And I haven't really seen a block so far, but obviously you need to communicate what the policy is, what the expectation is. If the employee is asking something extra, what is the protocol? Do they need to, do they have a blanket approval to, go and provide it within a certain budget, or do they need to come back to you, to somebody else to ask for approval? So yeah, it's only the setting the policy is only kind of the documenting of a process, but then the operation side, it is done by different people, and everyone needs to be kind of on the same page, more or less. And communication and transparency in the relationship, it's crucial.
Thank you so much, Petia. The next question, I think it can be answered by either of you, but it was about how do you build this personalized relocation benefits package when moving over 1,000 people every year? And I think this really speaks to large volumes of cases that you might have to manage internally.
Mm-hmm.
Go, Lori. Yeah.
Yes, I can take this one. One example of such a policy would be a core flex policy, right? So you would build your policy around having a core set of elements that allow you to comply with the regulations, and then have a menu of relocation options. Then that can be chosen by your employee, and then this menu, it depends, of course, on your company situation, on your budget, and there are many ways to build it. But one of these ways is to say, okay, in general, we have a budget of X amount, and within this budget of X amount, from all of the list of the benefits that you have in front of you, you would be able to choose 5, because those 5 would be more or less within that budget. And in this way, you provide that flexibility to the employee to choose what makes sense to him or her or they, based on their own personal circumstances and needs. But of course, perhaps another challenge that you may face here is, having a technology solution that would allow you for this customization. We've changed our policy a lot throughout the years, and we've moved through different models. And right now, our partner's technology can actually support such a setup, right? Where there is a platform, there's an interface where the employee goes in and can select the options that makes more sense to their personal situation.
Lovely. Just 1 second, because Tash is helping me from the background. Okay, so we have another question that either of you can answer, and is how, so do you usually talk to the expats themselves, or talk to the HR department of the company and let them handle it? And also when it comes to expectations management, that you talk about, how does that come into play? This was one of the questions that we got in the chat.
So I'll just say, and just to put it out there, our company is a lot, like, our moving population, as I mentioned, is a lot smaller. And it's only me, the global mobility person currently in the company. But I do like to talk to everyone myself. However, it really depends, and it comes again to how the company operates, but not only the company as one organization, but you have different regions, you have different business lines, and sometimes depending even on regional culture or the way the business line is structured, the relationship, let's say, with the HR might be closer. So I work very, very close with all our HR business partners globally, and we make sure that if somebody wants to move or somebody is selected to be moved, HR home and host HR are aware at the same time as I am. We try to do that as much as possible. And depending, and we discuss like what benefits will be provided, what is, like what policy applies to this person. And I like to be able to speak to people, and I try, like any opportunity I have, I do that, because I have a bit more knowledge about what can happen during a move, how to set expectations, if immigration is needed, specifically timelines there, documents, and so on. But if again, it depends, like sometimes maybe the HR has a better relationship, or in a way that it's structured, they already had like some sort of a pre-relationship. So in this case, it might be that they talk about it and like have the initial conversation, but put me in contact, and I'm always available. And sometimes people don't want to talk to somebody at the beginning just because, oh, it's all fine. But when it starts unraveling, when you start the actual move and things start unraveling, questions come up. So I currently do not talk to 100% of the people. I wish I could, but sometimes it's not even that they don't want to have that. But I'm always make sure that I'm available, and they know that I'm available, and they can reach out for any questions. And about setting expectations, it's like when you have that conversation, initial conversation, you just say, timelines, what to expect, like what you can check with them, like what their needs are, what their priorities are, explain what can be available. And then based on that, just give them advice, and always, try to be, and I don't say like available that somebody can just message me and say like, oh, let's, go on a call, but obviously be responsive and open with people. And again, the same thing is that even if I don't have that direct conversation, make sure that any red flags that I would be can foresee are shared with the HR who will be on that conversation, so they can set the expectations.
Wonderful, thank you. Maybe one last question, and then we will be running out of time. So just this last one, but what do you feel could be the best advice to give to a company who are at the beginning of formalizing a global mobility policy? And the person that asked this question gave a bit more context. So they said a smaller, less than 150 employee, I assume, company and global mobility requests are currently being approved on an ad hoc basis, as opposed to a more formalized program, I assume. So Laurie or Pet here, whoever wants to take it.
I can take this one, and maybe Petya, you can also, of course, add to it. I would say that it's really important at the beginning to set your objectives and to understand what your short, long-term business strategy is, and what you are trying to achieve with setting a program. And in addition to this, if you look at where you are currently today, also think about what problem are you trying to solve. Because it may be that even if you are a small company, you have big budgets, right? So in essence, the budget would not be an issue. It would be more of an issue of finding a structure that of the policy that would enable you to have maybe less administrative tasks, or not doing things on an ad hoc basis, having a more consistent approach to your hires. So it really depends what is exactly the problem that you're trying to solve when building this policy. And also consider who is your talent, right? Like, what kind of talent are you trying to attract, and what speaks to this type of talent, right? So I'm thinking here also, let's say if you are planning to hire more, in young engineers, right? Understand what is it important to them. So first, so that you can offer those benefits that will ensure that they have a great experience and that will make them actually choose your company over other companies.
And I'll just add, like, if you're not sure how to do the policy and like how it will work, maybe just try with like a guidelines first, or a very basic policy with supporting guidelines, so it's easier to change, because you will just need to see how it works. And there's no point of doing a nice, structured, long, very detailed policy, and it appears that it actually doesn't work as you imagined it works. So maybe start with something smaller that can be easily amended and changed at the beginning.
That's a great point, Petya.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to the both of you. So we're coming to the end of the 1 hour time slot that we allocated for this session. So thank you everyone for joining us today, but especially thank you so much to Petya and Laurie for being here and sharing so much of their knowledge around global mobility. It was lovely to hear you, and I'm sure people really appreciate you trying to answer their questions as well. So that is the end of the session for today. So you can always stay tuned and follow us on LinkedIn to make sure that you are kept in the loop if we organize future events like this one or any other type that we might come up with. And other than that, I can only wish you all a really nice evening and a nice rest of the week. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Paula. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Tash as well. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.